So I'm going to try to keep this video as unedited as possible. It might seem kind of random for me to revive this channel, just as random as it was for me to leave for 2 months. And I was sort of hinting at it during the last videos, but the reason why is because of two very different reasons. The first month I was gone, it was because absolutely nothing was happening. The only interesting things that happened were me getting my driver's license and like me getting COVID again, which, I can't really make a video on that, or at least I didn't want to. And then for the second half, the second month before now, sorry, I don't know if you can hear that. Second month before now, I was working on my gaming channel, which I believe is automatically linked in the description. Subscribe to that if you want to support me because it's at 500 subscribers, just about, and that's like an important turning point. Anyway, now that I'm back at college, and yes, that's where I am now. I'm back at college, and like this is a single room. It's pretty amazing considering I was in a room that was basically the size of this, but with 3 people last year. Anyway, that's what's been going on with me. I've actually been doing well in my classes. I've been doing well with that channel. Things have been going well. So now I want to just tell a story because I have a few experiences that have happened now that I'm back, but I have one story that I want to tell because I thought it was pretty ridiculous when it was happening. Really involves a whole day. Well, starting in the mid to late afternoon, about 3 p.m. Pretty much, I went into the town, the medium-sized town that's near my college campus, with 2 people who I'll keep anonymous. But of course it'll be interesting because it's the three of us the entire time. Because they basically both wanted to get piercings. We went to this tattoo shop that also does piercings, of course. Hung out there for a bit. Did that, and then we're like, oh, okay, so do we just go back now? But I had Ubered over there. Even though I got my license, I didn't bring a car. And trust me, the story does get interesting, so you'll just have to stay with me. Although, I feel like some people will watch my videos even when they aren't interesting, which thank you for that. Anyway, we decided to go get food and just go to I think it was Staples or something, which is something that happened throughout high school as well. People would just go to the grocery store for fun, that's still funny to me, but that's what we did. We got food, we went there, and then we're like, okay, should we go back now? I still didn't want to pay for the Uber, right? And I should just mention at this point that I am very good at keeping my phone charged. Like, my phone rarely has ever died, but at this point, right before we had gone, I had just gotten back from classes, so I had no time to charge my phone. So it's at like 40% at this point. It'll be important later. But basically, we decided to just go walk around. And then we had found, like, on a map, on Google Maps, we're like, okay, this is the place we'll want to go. And I'll reveal where that is later. But we started walking towards that direction, found, like, a dispensary, like a marijuana dispensary, and I'm not really into that, but it just seemed like a fun place to sort of check out. And it was weird because the place was literally locked up with bars, like it was a prison. I found that funny. There was like a park that we went into, shit like that, but basically we kept walking, and even though it was mid to late afternoon when we were gonna go, at this point it was getting dark-ish. I had started this at like 3 p.m. Now that I'm thinking about it, it was more probably like 6 when we had actually gotten there. So at this point, you could see the sun going down a little bit, but not so much. Anyway, we're still walking around this town, and pretty much we're approaching the place that we decided we were going to go. And I'll reveal that now. Where we were heading to was a sex shop because we're immature as fuck, and we thought that would be funny. In 90% of this story, well, at least a good amount of the story will be once we're there. But we're still going, and we're also near like a fair, like a carnival, and we were also planning on checking that out. But we're getting close to the sex shop, and like the sun is going down at this point. We can see the carnival lights, and I go, we make it there eventually after that long walk, and we go inside, and keep in mind, I had no idea what that would be like. I didn't know if it would be like just straight up disgusting in there or what. So like we go in and it's very brightly lit. It's kind of weird because it's a very open room, like very open room, and there's only like the stuff at the sides of the room pretty much. The rest of it is just like very open and boxy. And then there's of course the counter where the guy's working. And like we go in there, and at the front of the store there was like this fucking like creepy looking mannequin, which obviously I see that as being creepy. People who go to those places unironically see it in a different light. But that was scary. I can't believe that this is my returning story. But anyway, we go in there, and then like the guy working there obviously noticed that we had no idea what the fuck we were doing being there, and he also like he immediately asked. He's like, "You guys are over 18, right?" Like I just gotta ask, "Are you sure that you guys are over 18?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure." Anyway, we go through this like other area, and there's like two other big rooms to it. And what we didn't realize at the time is it wasn't like a sex shop; it was a sex theater. And I'll explain how that works. Well, really, the guy working there explained how that actually works. Once again, we had no idea what we were getting into. But, like, we weren't even sure if we were meant to be in that section or if it was even allowed for us to be there. Dude, my channel's gonna get taken down. Anyway, we go back out, like, towards sort of the front of the store, and we're just looking at the shit on the shelves. And, like, 90% of it was, like, porn movies in DVDs. And it's like, okay, that's interesting. I thought that that was a thing of the past. But we're looking around, and then basically, I think the guy working there finally was just like, okay, they obviously have no idea what's going on. So, pretty much what he does is he's just like, I can tell that you guys are a little scared. That's how he described it. He's like, I can tell you guys are a little scared. So let me just give you a tour. And we're like, okay, sure. And pretty much he like brings us over to that theater area. Well, there were two areas like that, but he brings us over to one of them. We're all still scared to go, and he's like, don't be shy. Don't be shy. Trust me. It's okay for you to be here." And it makes me wonder, like, that obviously wasn't the first time that some person who's barely over 18 has gone in there and had no idea why they were there. But he shows us, like, this room, which is like, it's like 4 feet wide, like, or like actually probably 2 square feet. It's basically just a bed, but like a bed that's more of the size of a chair, okay, smaller than the bed that I have in the background here. But it was definitely a bed in just a chair shape. And the only other thing was a TV that was mounted on the wall with a DVD player. And it's like, obviously you know what that's for considering the context of the movies that were there. So he explains, he's like, yeah, people can rent these rooms out for 30 minutes with whatever movie that they want. And it's like, okay, is doing that at home not enough? But I didn't say that. Not gonna judge. Okay, I'm a little bit, but I wasn't going to his face. Anyway, he brings us back out because there were like 10 rooms like that lined up, and they were all for that purpose. All of them were just that fucking small bed with the TV mounted on the wall with the DVD player, and all of them were exactly like that. Brings us back out, then he points to the other room, and he's like, so that's where couples go to rent out a room. Also has a DVD player, and they can also buy the sex toys and bring it there. If they're, I'm trying to think of how you describe it. He's like, if they want to spice things up, they can go there. And I still don't get the appeal of that because it's just like a private room in a public place. It seems kind of random. And he's like, yeah, it's $30 for 2 hours in there. And at this point, what we start to notice with him mentioning that is there's like screaming coming from the room, like moaning, which we thought was like ambience coming from the store, because like I feel like that's the type of thing that they would play. They would just straight up play the audio to porn inside of a sex shop. But we realized that it was actually a person inside of the room, that it was being occupied, and they were screaming that loud that we could hear it. And I'm like, what the fuck are we doing here? Anyway, at that point, we looked around a little bit more, and then I had this idea. I'm just like, I wonder how he would respond if I asked if he takes, or if the store takes returns for used items. I, yeah, I'm immature sometimes, but basically one of the people I was with just was like, I'll do it. And they asked him, just like, so do you guys take returns on items that have been used and someone wants to be refunded? And then he said, like, he thought that was a serious question. He's like, no, we don't usually, but if it's an Amazon order from here, then yes, we take it as a return. And I'm like, why? Like, are you gonna sell it again? Why would you do that? Maybe someone can explain. But pretty much at that point, it's like, okay, I've seen enough, and we leave. And we were there for a little bit. It was at the point where the sun was going down quickly, and pretty much we decided to go to the fairgrounds, and that's where I'd want to get picked up with the Uber. So we walk over there. No, actually, first we went to like, yeah, no, we went to the fairgrounds right after that. It was just a decently far walk. We go there, and then we're planning on actually going in, sort of, but then we realized that once we got to the front gate, which that took a long time to find in the first place because it was a fairly large, fairground. But we get to the front and see where they buy the tickets, and it's like or $15 per each ticket. It's like, wow, we're getting smoked. We're not doing that. But then a guy was like, "Are any of you?" A guy comes up to us and is like, "So are any of you paying with card?" And someone responds with like, "No, the prices are kind of steep." And they said, "If you," he points at me and he's like, "If you're paying with card, just give me your card and I'll get all of you in there for $15." I'm like, do people fall for this? Like that was the most obvious scam in my, at least in my head. Maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but like, give this dude your credit card and he'll get you in the fairgrounds for $15. Like, that is so random. I don't know why. I don't know what the purpose was for that. So obviously, I think we were obviously getting scammed. And then we basically walk to like the street corner where I'm gonna call the Uber and like see these sort of shady looking like teenage guys riding in circles. It looks like a fucking like Disney Channel bullying scene where they're like riding their bikes around in a circle, and I'm assuming there would be like a person in the middle who they're gonna throw eggs at or something. I don't I don't know where I'm getting at with that, but basically we see this and they're all like, they all have vapes. They're all smoking, or they're all hitting vapes while they're riding around in a circle on bicycles. And it's like, okay, right, I don't wanna deal with this. We go the other way. I call the Uber. And at this point, like, my phone was still at about, 25 or so percent, but what I didn't realize was that having the Uber app open would drain the shit out of my phone so insanely quickly. So I call the Uber, and the guy, he's on his way there, pretty much. And he's getting sort of close. My phone is, at this point, I didn't realize how fast it would go down. It's at like 13% or something. It went from like 25% to 13% in about 10 minutes of just looking at the Uber updates. I had no idea that would happen, but I won't make that mistake again. He's getting close. He's about a block away. But then I see that he's just stopped moving at an intersection. So I'm like, oh, okay, he's probably just at a light. But he stays there. He stays there for a good 5 minutes. And I'm like, okay, what is happening at this point? Does he think that's where we're getting picked up? So I'm about to like maybe start heading over there, cancel the order and call a different one. But then he starts moving, and it looks like he's moving, towards where we're meant to be. The app starts updating again, but then it puts him back exactly at that same intersection, and then he just stays there. At that point, I tried messaging him through the app, which I had never done before, and it said that he had seen the message, but didn't reply at all. So then I tried calling him through the app, and then he answered, and I just, like, I can hear sort of background noise, but the dude isn't saying anything. So I'm like, this is so insanely weird. So at that point, I give up. I cancel the order, which, by the way, canceling an order on Uber, it costs $5, even though they didn't do anything, just for their time traveling out there. But I'm like, I don't even care. I just want to get out of here. So then we're like, let's go to a different place. My phone at this point is basically almost dead, but I know that there's enough time. So pretty much, you know, I was already in low power mode, but I put my phone's brightness all the way down, and we walk over to a restaurant. And I'm like, it'll be easier for an Uber to find us at a restaurant than a street corner, probably. So I go in there, I order it, and just wait for it. Uber gets there, we get in, and I check my phone, to see, and it's like, oh, it's at 3%. I guess it wasn't that close. Boom, my phone dies right as I check it, or right after I see that it was at 3%. And I'm like, well, at least we made it in. So the Uber makes it over to the college campus, and I was just relieved that we were even able to make it back, because I don't know what would have happened if my phone had actually died before that point. Would it have been like, would I have had to ask someone for their charger, or maybe someone else would have had to order the Uber, even though the people I was with, none of them knew how to do it. Maybe we would have had to call a friend to help us out. Yeah, I was being, just in general, this whole thing was stupid, but this was the first time I was able to have fun just out ever, really. So of course I'm inexperienced with it, but we make it back, and then I'm like going to my back to my dorm. But the thing is, what had happened was I didn't have my room key with me. I had forgotten that. I actually was afraid that I had lost it out rather than just leaving it in my room. But I make it back, and I don't have my room key, and my room key is attached to my room card, and the room card is what opens the building. So at that point, I just have to wait for somebody to hopefully show up and let me in. And since my phone was dead, I couldn't message my roommates to come down. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna have to just go somewhere else? But no, I was just gonna wait for as long as it took. I knew that someone would show up eventually. Someone did show up eventually. I go in. I go up the elevator. I go to my room, knock on the door, or I ring the doorbell. One of my roommates lets me in. And then I look for my card, and I see that what had happened was it had fallen out of my pocket while I was on the couch. Because right before I left, I was setting up a TV. And I guess while I was doing that, the card fell out of my pocket, and I didn't realize it. But, crisis averted. I made it back. I have my key. I can charge my phone, everything like that. And at this point, it was kind of the dead of night, and I'm just like, what the hell just happened? Like, if you've watched my channel, you would know that it was kind of built around me being so sheltered that I had no idea what I was doing with anything, and I had never had any experiences that a teenager had had before. And I went from that to just, during my second year of college. My first year of college was much of the same, of course, once again, if you kept up with my videos, but I still think this can get my channel taken down, this video, but I go from basically being super sheltered, never doing anything. I didn't even never really hanging out with friends out in a town before, to basically getting stranded, or almost getting stranded in a town that I don't know well. After my phone died, after going to a sex shop, which I had no idea what that would be like. And you're probably listening to this being like, wow, you're a fucking idiot. And the point is, yes, good. Because this is all I've ever wanted. I've wanted to just be able to act stupid, pretty much, and do stupid shit just for fun and for nothing else. First 13 years of my life, I just focused on school, even though I hated it. I was just like, I just need to set myself up for a good future, and I basically never had fun before. The most interesting things that happened were the stories that I told about school, where like, you know, the principal gets fired and the second principal is a scumbag who looks like Jeffrey Epstein, or like, one of my friends dying, or once I was in high school, me having a stalker. Like all of my interesting stories that I did have as a teenager, they were all just horrible, horrible experiences, but those were the highlights of my life because everything else was so boring. I don't know where I'm going with this. But the point is, yes, as I've always said, I'm not going to abandon this channel permanently, ever. I'm just going to take breaks until I have something to report on. If you've watched this far, please subscribe to my channel, my gaming channel called Mob Games Real. Like I said, I'm cusping 500. It's at 498 as I'm recording this. But I should hopefully reach 500 today, and then I could get monetization and stuff like that, which will be nice. As I'm a college student, I live off of fucking Top Ramen, and yeah, I do have that here. I got that in a grocery bag, but it'll be useful to have that. Anyway, I think the reason why this video is taking so long, well, the reason why, I mean the runtime of this video is so long, not how long it took me to make it since my last video, but it's because I haven't done this in so long. And that's also why the entire 20 minutes of this have been spent with me talking. Anyway, I think that's about all I have to say. That story is definitely something, and I definitely have other stories, and I have other stories that are going to be approaching. Regardless, I don't know. Hopefully you enjoyed my return. I'm going to go upload this now.